Michael, so we are here in Shanghai at the China-Europe International Business School, which is home to Financial Times #1 EMBA program in the world. So welcome to CEIBS. Michael, you're the Executive Director of the EMBA Council, EMBAC, and I hear that you have been the Executive Director for 18 years.
18
years. So you must be the right person who is able to speak on the EMBA market around the world, right? And when I say the market here, both on the demand side and the supply side, demand in terms of the student body, applicants, what are they looking for? And also on the supply side, what are business schools doing to meet the needs, of the students? Would you be able to share with us some of these trends that are taking place worldwide?
Absolutely. COVID, I think, is a pivot point, since it was a dramatic change in how the academy, I think, thinks specifically about this space, but certainly, across higher education. And when we look at degree space for the working professional and executive markets in 2020, we saw the academy pivot in a way that many thought was maybe impossible to do, and pivoted very well, meaning moving from fully face-to-face delivery, particularly in the Executive MBA space, a category that was viewed historically as something that had to be done this way. Not to say that there weren't schools practicing hybrid and online learning, but we saw this dramatic shift, and we're now seeing from students, we researched this, is connected to students now wanting their preferred method being hybrid delivery. Not saying they don't want face-to-face interactivity, hence the hybrid. By the way, I should clarify, hybrid, not the hybrid that was happening during COVID, where a professor was synchronously teaching to a group in the classroom and a group online at the same time. I'm talking about hybrid in the sense of part of the program is delivered face-to-face, part of the program some form of distance learning. And we see that that's continued to be something that is of interest to the market and that schools are delivering, and frankly, delivering very effectively. The other thing that we see is on the career services side as a trend. Now, while schools in this category serving the executive and working professional populations have been offering career services for a long time, there's even a greater demand for those services. Part of the reason for that is our data shows that now students attending these programs, only 18% of them globally receive full tuition reimbursement. Whereas at the inception of executive MBAs, for example, you, in some cases, had to be sponsored by your employer, or you couldn't even attend an executive MBA program. And now with the executive MBA and other, say, MS degrees for executives and working professionals, we're seeing that this demand for career services. With the shift in students mostly paying their own way, their expectations have shifted. And this is one place that we're seeing that shift.
And what are business schools doing about this?
Yeah, so they're beginning, and have been, frankly, offering more and more opportunities for their student body, and again, in this category, to take advantage of things like executive coaching, executive speaker series. Not necessarily, I think when people hear career services, they often think of the full-time MBA market, where you have, armies of companies converging on campus to interview students. And I won't tell you that that isn't happening even in our category, but honestly, those employers, mostly what we hear, are not looking for a seasoned executive, right? They're looking for someone maybe that's going to go to KPMG, not to pick out any one company, but and be sort of groomed and molded, right, as a full-time MBA student. So not so much on-campus recruiting, but this executive coaching, speaker series, networking events in a way that connects executives to each other that are sitting in the classroom. More of a demand for that.
Then the other thing, Michael, is while, perhaps like China, we call it a ChatGPT moment, but here in China, we call it the DeepSeek moment. This whole idea of, AI kind of reshaping businesses. So how are EMBA programs evolving to ensure that students, participants are kind of equipped with skills that are, let's say, future-proof?
Yeah, so that's an interesting way to put it, future-proof, when we talk about AI, because I think it's rapidly changing at a pace that is so hard to keep up with, that I want to be careful that any school yet that we know of hasn't found maybe the secret sauce, but I can tell you what we're hearing from employers. So part of the surveys that we do, recently we did a survey that looked at the viewpoint from the prospective student, alumni, and the students sitting in the classroom. We looked at it from the employer view and then from schools. And on the employer side, they are certainly interested in those technical skills that you're talking about, 100%. So schools are trying to find ways to integrate that. I think at the executive level, what we're hearing is from our members is we're not looking to make technology experts out of them, but how do you tap the technology and take advantage of it as an executive across the enterprise? The other thing, completely counter maybe to the AI topic of technology itself though, is employers are also seeing that they want more soft skills, that's becoming something even more important than it ever has. Teamwork, communication, things that you might think, well, if you're an executive, shouldn't you have already figured that out? Not necessarily. And so it's almost this paradox where we need to be able to interact and leverage the technology, but at the same time, at least so far, we still need the ability to do this in an effective way.
As you say, and I agree, in the sense that, I think it's more in terms of how do you apply AI within the organization that is going to, improve productivity, and things like that. You were saying that, what is also important is this, network leadership, team building. What are the other kind of skills that students are looking for that they could enhance through the EMBA program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that we hear consistently, not just on the student side, and ultimately, students are companies, I get it, the deep connection, but that we hear from employers is the need for more critical thinking skills. And regardless of the technology is not going away. We know it's going to advance more rapidly. And while we may be able to type something into your favorite bot, or whatever it might be named, and get an answer, still at some point, we have to be able to think critically, what do we do with that as an executive? And the thing that executive MBA programs and programs that are offered at the Academy have done for decades is help executives learn how to think more effectively as critical thinkers. Yes, you get some of that on the job, but let's be honest, when you put a group of people in a room together and you have someone as yourself leading them a discussion. I'm an EMBA alum myself from a long time ago, and the idea that you go in as a very smart person, you come out so much smarter. And I think ego may prevent us from thinking that on the way in, but on the way out, we're almost humbled by what we're able to learn from yourself.
I say this all the time to my students, that you may think you know everything, but once you enter an EMBA classroom, you realize that, guess what? Everybody else knows a lot of things too, right? So really, I think it's a humbling experience, and I think it should. It
100%.
should be a humbling experience, because obviously you will learn from the professors, but I think equally you learn from each other as well. I tell my students, what is important for us is who are the others in the classroom with you, because these are the people that you're going to, to learn from.
When I've talked to reporters, I couldn't agree more with that last statement about the peer learning. Focus on the talking head, 100%, right? You need that faculty member. We need you at the front of the room. But where else can you duplicate having, whether it's 30 or 60 or 90 peers like that in a room from a diverse set of industries, debating and discussing, okay, where else can you do that? You can't even do it back
in a safe environment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about returns on investments, right? Because obviously EMBA programs are not cheap, and especially given, the current period of uncertainty, the lack of the ability to actually look into too much into the future. What does the data that you have, what does it say about the returns on investment from an EMBA, program, right? In terms of increases in salary, in terms of promotion, because remember, these are also some of the criteria for the ranking part of EMBA program. But how is it like in general across the different programs across different countries in the world?
Yeah, 100%. And as far as the rankings go, just for the record, we're ranking agnostic here at EMBAC. But as far as your specific question, so we do exit surveys that are done with our member programs around the world. And what we see in our most recent survey, exit survey, the 20% increase on average on our it's compensation, full compensation, which is salary and bonuses. The other thing we see is 36% of students say they received a promotion. What is interesting to me, maybe you don't get a promotion, but we see 53% reporting increase in responsibilities. Those are the hard metrics, but there's some other metrics that over the years we've heard as we've interviewed alumni. Years ago, we did a survey with LinkedIn and surveyed alumni from 5 to 20 years out, specifically in the executive degree category. And one of the things they talked about was the networking, the importance of networking. And that's ingrained in what EMBA programs and other master's degree programs for the working professional offer. I mean, it's built into the way these programs are run. Additionally, we heard about the idea of not just the hard metrics of salary and job, all those are all important, they're all important, but also the idea of how can it help me think differently about the enterprise. And I think we have seen over and over again that the Academy does that very well, whether we're talking about an Executive MBA or some sort of other master's degree for that population. So some of the hard metrics, absolutely important, but I think there's some other things to keep in mind, like that network effect that you and I have talked about offline.
Quite often when I meet applicants, they give me the idea that, a certain time in your career, you kind of reach some kind of a glass ceiling. And, in order to break that ceiling, you got to do something different. Right? You have to think in a different way. You have to speak in a different way. And I think this is where, when you talk about non-financial gains, I think an EMBA program can actually be so transformational that you actually can become a different person.
It's funny you say that. I won't name the school or the alumnus or what year, but I have the privilege over 18 years in this role of talking to lots of different alumni from different schools just to stay current on what's happening. I had an alumnus from a school tell me, Michael, this program changed my life. I said, whatever his name might have been, it was I said, changed your life? He said, 100%. It didn't just change my view of the business, but it changed how I viewed everything that I do. Right. Because I came out and realized not only did I not have all the answers, I didn't even know all the questions. And he said it was humbling, but it was so transformational, to use that word. And Bala, we hear that over and over and over. It has to be true. Can't keep hearing the same thing over and not be true.
What does networking do to an exec? And in this case here, not just locally, but also a global network.
I literally just posted something on LinkedIn about this a couple of days ago. EMBAC is a community of communities. Now I'm talking about us, right? So we're made up of all these disparate schools around the world, different types of degree categories, MS for executives, Executive MBA programs that are serving this working professional population. And then you think about what the network of executives benefits from that. So very specific example. We had an alumnus at an unnamed program in our network, and an alumnus in another unnamed program in a network, totally different geographies. But because of the experience that they had in these types of programs, not only were they so inclined to think differently about their business, but they were inclined to think that I could learn from a different business type than my own. Because I was sitting next to somebody from the nonprofit sector maybe, or I'm sitting next to a marketing guy. I mean, you probably hear this all the time. And I had a woman who is in the opera world, not as a singer, but running a small opera company. And I had one of her peers in the classroom say, Michael, I learned more from her, totally different. I'm in a Fortune 100 company at that time, totally different business, different way of thinking. And here I am sitting across from a person who's teaching me something. And that network effect, though, is global, right? It's not just here. And so I talk about what happens in EMBAC, and I think in EMBA programs and these other offerings, is what I call community compounding. Right? We all in finance know compounding, right? This amazing gift that the world of finance gives us. It happens, Bala, when people network with each other, because your network becomes my network, and that happens, and we just can't even sometimes realize how deep it goes.
In our program here at CEIBS, we have that diversity, gender diversity, in terms of nationalities, people working in different cities, and so on. But one thing that I try to add or even emphasize is the diversity when it comes to the various industries that people come from. And I think the ability to learn from another industry, right? Because one industry may think that this is standard stuff. But for somebody from another industry, this could be a real eye-opener. This is where innovation could come in as well, especially when you have this diversity in the classroom where people come from 10, 15 different industries.
Agree 100%.
I know that generally, worldwide, but certainly in China, for instance, because of the state of our economy, at the moment, the demand for EMBA has slightly decreased. And I think it's not the case where people do not see the value of the EMBA, but rather, just like with any other purchases, they are postponing their decision. So, what do you think? Is this an ideal time to, EMBA? Now, not next year.
Yeah, this is a great question. And you might say, Michael, you're biased. You're leading an association that represents the category. But here's what I would say. My answer hasn't changed in 18 years. I think of an individual, and I believe all of us need to think of ourselves this way. You have a portfolio of investments. Maybe you have real estate. Maybe you have, index funds. Maybe now you have Bitcoin, whatever it might be. The biggest thing that you have control over, I can't control if the real estate market's going up and down. I can bet on it. I can't control whether I should go into digital currency or not. I can bet on it. The stock market, pick it. The thing I have most control over, which should be part of my investment portfolio, is me and my professional development. So is now a good time? Absolutely. Was yesterday a good time? 100%. Will tomorrow be a good time? In my view, yes. And I would say with AI and technology coming at us so fast, the longer you put off whatever you do for professional development, the more you're weakening your portfolio. And the biggest thing you can control is your professional development. Why not invest in that as soon as you...
What I tell applicants, when the world is a little bit more certain, you can use your gut feeling and probably, maybe, make the right decision. But living in a very uncertain, volatile world, your own gut feeling is no longer sufficient. You need to have the gut feeling of others as you raise the probability your decision is actually the right decision. So I think I get it in the sense that maybe instead of looking at the economy, you got to look at yourself and your career path, right? So the question, is this the right time to do an EMBA? Where are you in your career?
Exactly. And if we're honest, some people, for whatever reason, may not be the right time for them to do it now. But I think it's too easy as professionals for us to go, well, I'll figure it out later. Well, later means when? Is it tomorrow? Is it 3 years from now? So if you have the ability, and I think most of the people in the category that we're talking about, which are working professionals, if they're gonna place a bet, why not place it on yourself? And what better time to do that than now? If I was sitting, I'm an EMBA alumni, and when I went into that classroom for the first time, I remember walking in as an executive, as a manager at the time, that had about, at that time, the average 13, a little below the average, 13 years of work experience, and I was in management. And I walked in, I hadn't been in formal education, for a degree in, 20 years since I got my engineering degree. And I'm sitting in there, and it was a finance professor. I won't say his name, but I remember his name. And he had handed out a case on Dell talking about derivatives. And my engineering background, I'm like, derivatives? I wasn't a finance guy. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I know calculus. I know what a derivative is. And then I start reading his case. And I'm like, what did I do? I can't do this. And we had to write, and this is going to seem very self-serving, but I'm going to come around and make a point for the viewing audience. At the end of his class, he kept my paper as a model to use going forward. What's the point of that? The point is because oftentimes I think we talk ourselves out of doing what we need most. And I needed, for me, it was an Executive MBA program. I needed it most in that moment. And I just wasn't sure. And I almost talked myself out of it because of fear. And those that are sitting out there, they're going to find a reason that today is no good. The mortgage is too high. My spouse demands too much of me. My kids have busy lives. There's never a right time, Bala. The right time is now. And so my encouragement is reach out to the schools in your region, or if you want to do a global program, reach out to global programs. At least become informed. You may surprise yourself that what you think is beyond you might be the exact thing you've been waiting to change your career.
Michael, Thank you very much. Have a great time at CEIBS and a great time in Shanghai.
Thank you, Bala.